Good evening, everyone. If everyone can hear me, welcome to this Minneapolis City Council Ward 10 Forum that is brought to you by the neighborhood associations, including East Biddy-Makaska, South Uptown, East Harriet Farmstead, as well as Whittier Alliance and the Lynn Lake Business Association. This forum tonight, as you can tell, of course, is a Zoom webinar that is being recorded, and we'll be asking questions that are based on those culled from registrants, and we appreciate those submissions. Each of the candidates, upon receiving the question, will have up to 2 minutes to respond. Brevity is greatly appreciated. I am Solomon Gustavo, your moderator this evening. I'm a reporter with MinPost covering local government. And the candidates on hand in alphabetical order include Isa Chuktai, Alicia Gibson, Katie Jones, Uba Noor, Chris Parsons, and David Wheeler. The forum tonight is on business recovery and infrastructure. The questions will deal with challenges the ward has underwent since the pandemic and unrest following George Floyd's death. Just a stretch that is the last 18 months or so. And the next forum will be one that covers public safety. So some questions might touch on how safety and policing affect business recovery, but we ask that you just kind of limit your questions to that strictly, and then we'll get into more broader themes on public safety at the next forum. I'll start with asking questions now, and later on, if we have time, we might do a lightning round where we'll have answers up to 1 minute from candidates. But now we'll start with a 2-minute portion. At the very end, there'll be closing remarks that will also be 2 minutes each for each candidate. So firstly, hello, maybe a silent wave from everyone. Thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you to all the viewers and listeners. So the first question is, how can we address the public's perception that it is not safe to visit, shop, work, or live in Minneapolis? I'll go with Chuktai first. If you can answer that question, please. 2 minutes.
Great. So there's a perception among some people that it's not safe to live, work, and go about your day-to-day life in Minneapolis. And I think that starts with addressing ways for us to that starts with us finding ways to build community and have people spending time with one another. Increasing foot traffic is one way to do that. It's also something that has a really positive effect on our local businesses and our economy in our busiest corridors in Minneapolis and across Ward 10. So that looks like some of our there's some of our street festivals and things like that do that, but then there's permanent infrastructure changes around our streets that help facilitate that as well. So making it safer and easier for people to be on foot, to be using public transit, to be biking, to enjoy our communities and our businesses are a really good way of doing that. And then like investing in our people, and making sure that people's day-to-day needs are met. When people feel safer, everybody else does too. And yeah, so we live in a safer community.
Gibson, what's your take?
Yeah, so I served as the crime and safety liaison for our neighborhood association starting back in when I first got involved. I think it was 2017. We changed that quickly to community life and safety, because one of the things when I went and talked to our crime prevention specialists, when I was reading up on how how neighborhoods and how communities make safe spaces, the thing that they always talked about is that safe neighborhoods are vital neighborhoods, neighborhoods and communities where people are out doing things. So that has always been something that I have been advocating for in my neighborhood. Last summer when we had, really scary and traumatic experiences of people coming from outside of our city to kind of terrorize us. I was one of the main people inside my neighborhood as a leader of our neighborhood association, encouraging people to stay outside. We started a concert series because we know that, it does take all of us to make us safe. But I do think it's important to point out that it's not just a perception of crime and safety, right? We really are experiencing historic increase in violent crime. And so we need to ensure that people are safe. Somebody asked me the other day, Alicia, why is there, armed private security at the Lunds? Why do they care if people are shoplifting? And I said, no, that's not for shoplifters. That's because people have been armed with, have been robbed with people with guns, and they want to make people feel safe. So we don't want to privatize security. We want to make sure that we have enough public investment in our safety to make people safe.
Thank you, Alicia. Uba Nur, thank you for joining us. I see you there, and also wanted to note that Teresa Swanee, who's taking care of all the technical issues, pointed out that we'll have a kind of classic traffic like countdown, cueing the candidates as to when their time is up. Nur, we have just started in the first question, so I'll just tack you on to the end of this list here, and I'll read the question for you now. Firstly, welcome for being and thank you for being here. The question is, how can we address the public's perception that it is not safe to visit, shop, or walk, or live in Minneapolis? That's the question, and answering it now, 2 minutes to Katie Jones.
Yes, thank you for your question. And the way I'm thinking about this is that there's really two pieces to safety. So I've been out, on the doors for the last 10 months, talking to neighbors all across the ward, and I'm hearing two pieces of safety. First is crime, and the second is streets. And so when it comes to crime, we need to make sure that we have more eyes on the street. I've been talking to businesses, and they're wanting that as well, in the form of patrols, which can be unarmed, which I think is really important about this, because there are differing opinions throughout the ward when it comes to the trust in our public safety system. And I think having more eyes on the street that are unarmed can help start to build that trust back up. And then looking at the streets themselves, fast moving vehicles, really big vehicles, and many of them is really intimidating. And when we're talking about a perception of safety, it can't just be for adults. It has to be for kids, for teenagers, for older adults as well, to be able to move and around our ward and around our city, and feel comfortable doing so, and eating outside at some of our great restaurants, and playing and skating outside as well. We've got Familia skate shop. So all these different businesses, in order to access them, it has to be safe for us to get there. And that's been things that I've been working on. So I've sat on the city's infrastructure committee for a number of years. I'm also on the state's Sustainable Transportation Advisory Committee, really working to figure out how we can expand our transportation options. I think we also need to think about ourselves and how we're modeling that behavior as well. You know, I'm a small woman, and so I think I make an effort to walk around, you know, any time of day to make sure that I'm showing that I'm safe, and I want to make sure others feel that way too.
Chris Parsons.
Thank you, Solomon. You know, I've been a firefighter for 21 years, and I don't get the luxury of pulling up to a scene and pretending that a problem doesn't exist. We're not running to be the PR arm of the Chamber of Commerce. We are running to represent the people and to solve their problems. And our job is to make sure that we are allowing our residents to live and our businesses to live in a safe environment where people are safe inside and outside of their homes. I grew up in Minneapolis. I've spent 44 years in this city. I remember the bad old days of the 90s. There is not a perception problem. We have a crime problem going on in the city. We have a violent crime problem going on in the city. And the way that we fix the perception is by addressing the problem. That's what we're running for. We need to address the problem, which means we do need more police on the street. We also have other issues such as speeding. You know, a lot of our streets are unsafe, and that's because we are not enforcing moving violations. So anybody that has been in the city for any period of time can tell you that we do have a problem. But it's not unfixable. And it's a problem that a lot of other places are dealing with. But we also need to make sure that we are instilling confidence in our residents and in our visitors by governing competently and governing and being reasonable and admitting that we have a problem and addressing it.
David Wheeler. You are mute, sir.
Is that better? Okay.
That's better.
Thank you, Solomon. There is a perception and there is a reality that we have got a real spike in crime. People don't feel as safe. I have the opportunity to spend time with a lot of people who don't live in Minneapolis because I work in Edina, and we have a lot of people that come from the suburbs that work there. And they have this perception that Minneapolis is totally out of control. It's crazy, that it's so bad, nobody dares go anywhere. They won't go to a Twins game. They won't do all these things. Well, that is, I think there's some media that sort of pushes that. But the bottom line is people don't feel as safe, and they need to be able to do that. We rely in the city of Minneapolis on 60 to 70% of our customers coming in from outside of the city to spend money in the city, to work in the city, to play in the city, to go to restaurants, to do those sorts of things. And they need to feel that it's safe and that it's good. I was in Uptown when there were demonstrations going on, when they blocked the streets, ran into one of the fellow council members, candidates there too. And it was a very surreal kind of time and place. And when they were moved out, and that was not an easy thing to do, and I think it was handled relatively well, things started to calm down. And there was a return of some normalcy. We've gone through cycles before where things have been bad and difficult, but we need to work together to make sure that we have got safety, that people feel secure. Neighborhoods have to come together. We need to work together to help people feel that they can live here in a good way. Thank you.
Uba Noor.
Hi, my name is Uba Noor. There is two things that I would like to say about safety and perception about people, what they believe. I've been going to the city and door knocking and meeting with business owner. There is two party. Crime is really going high in Minneapolis. I live in Minneapolis. I live by Brand and Lake, and more people in our neighborhood don't feel safe. People they come from outside, anywhere. Not some people come from even Ohio to go shopping in Carmel Mall. and 24, people don't feel safe because of the things that's happening in our community. And it's really tragedy that what's going on, but it's fixable. We can do something about it. That's why we are here and to make the change that we all want to make it. So the other thing is that we need a police. We need more police. We need more police in our streets. We need police reform. We need a police that can communicate with the others, can engage, can play, can be part of the community. The police is a human being. They're part of us. They've been going doors that are not unsafe. They've been helping family crime. They've been helping crime to eliminate. But things happen. We have to learn a lesson from what happened. We cannot look back and cannot just say it happened and then we can say, okay, we don't want the police at all. We need the police in order to feel safe more, and more people, business owner, they don't feel safe. I was talking to other day, a lady, she said there was 5 guys come to me and they hit me, all of them. They put me down and they take my bag, they take my car. And I believe if we have more police in our streets, it won't happen. The crime will be not being like that. So how can we engage our community and teach others what needs to be done?
That'll be all. Thank you. On to the next question. It's the many businesses, nonprofits, and culturally based organizations along key Ward 10 commercial corridors. Those include on Lake Street, Nicollet Avenue, Hennepin, Lindale, and Bryant. Each have experienced unprecedented disruptions and trauma since the spring of 2020, COVID and civil unrest, of course. What specifics will you implement to ensure a full recovery?
Is that me?
That's not you yet, but I'll call you. We'll go with Alicia Gibson, please.
I think that we need to convene a special working group to really specifically focus on the recovery along Lake Street. I'm really glad that this question brought up the issue of the traumas that our communities there have faced. A lot of our businesses that make that part of our city so vital are run by, owned by, and are staffed by people who have come from trauma, who came here to find refuge. And so the things that they have experienced, are even more magnified than what they are for the rest of us. And so I think that we need to convene kind of a working group to make sure that there are people on this working group that know how to work with trauma, that are trauma informed, that are culturally specifically informed, but also include a working group of artists, a working group of people who have finance background, a working group of people that are great organizations like the Lake Street Council, who have a long history of organizing and working amongst that community as well, to really drill in and figure out where the roadblocks are, because there's still too many buildings with boards over them. There's still too many businesses that have not received their recovery funds. And we need to really, change that very, very quickly. There's a lot of money at play here. We need to make sure it's transparent and that it's getting to the right people.
Chris Parsons.
Thank you. Seeing Lake Street and our South Side businesses burn after the murder of George Floyd and the unrest that followed was, to see what happened to our cultural and commercial heart of the South Side was just a gut punch. And but I have been heartened by the rebuilding effort and how the community has come together. That is the great thing that has come out of this, and that is the work of the Lake Street Council and the 80,000 donors that have donated over $12 million, and how the community has come together to get money out the door and to help businesses, and also has come together in discussing our legacy of institutional racism in this country and having those tough conversations. But government needs to do more, and government can do more. And the great thing is that the city has a raft of programs already in place that can help businesses rebuild, can help new business owners come into the scene to fill the empty storefronts, to help out with inventory. We've seen ARP money, American Recovery Plan money, coming from the federal government flowing into the city, and that money is already starting to be distributed. The state of Minnesota kicked in $80 million last year, or I'm sorry, at this last legislative session, but unfortunately that money was not just directed towards Lake Street, so that money is going statewide. So help is on the way, but government needs to do more, and we need to spend more money and to bolster our existing programs.
To you, Katie Jones.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I was wondering if I was skipped. So yeah, when it comes to what's been happening for the last 18 months or so has just been horrific for our commercial corridors. Both the pandemic first and then the civil unrest has just been really difficult for all of our businesses along Lake Street in particular, but also Nicollet and Hennepin and Lyndale. And so we need to be focusing on how can we rebuild those. And I'm an engineer, so I'm a problem solver when it comes down to it. And the first step to problem solving is listening. So that's what I've been doing. I've gone and talked to businesses on Lake Street, on Nicollet, in Uptown and in Lynn Lake. And some of the great ideas that have come out of this are to make sure that we're focusing on creating those pathways for feedback for our businesses. So creating a small business advisory council. We have a lot of advisory committees within the city, and yet we don't have one for small businesses and entrepreneurs. So having a regular and routine communication mechanism for our small businesses is going to be crucial for the rebuilding. Another thing is to create a new program an idea that came out of my conversation with Lynn Lake businesses as a contest for free rent for a year for at critical nodes of our ward. So I'm thinking about Hennepin and Lyndale and Hennepin and Lake Street and Lynn Lake. Those two in particular have a lot of vacancies, and if we can get one business in there that brings more foot traffic, which I think is really critical to then bringing more momentum and more energy into these spaces. And not only with the contest you would get one winner, we have a bunch of businesses investing time and money into new business plans, which are critical for making our corridors thrive.
David Wheeler.
Unmute myself now. Okay. I don't think it is only more and new and more complicated government programs, though people who run for public office think it has to do with government programs. There are already a whole bunch of initiatives going on in Lake Street. The Rotary Club that I'm a member of has been mentoring and working with small businesses, and business people from that club have gone and worked with those businesses and have offered support and help. The nonprofit world is full of tremendous opportunities. There are faith communities that get deeply involved and make a difference. We need to look at this not just as a government issue, but government is part of the solution. But there are all sorts of resources in our community that can come to bear fruit on this and that can help the recovery. We've been in a hellish time. And there is, I agree completely that trauma has been part of our whole ethos for quite a while. And I think Alicia Gibson was right on the mark with that. We need a lot of healing through this trauma, and mental health issues are important. The county recently brought on 36 new mental health workers. They've invested $20 million in this. Hennepin, we're part of Hennepin County. We can work with the people from Hennepin County. We can work with people who are in the nonprofit sector. We can work with people who are in the faith communities. And we all need to work together to help heal our community and to bring opportunity to our businesses, particularly businesses that are owned by people who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Thank you.
Uba Noor.
I'm part of a Lake Street people who own business, and I've been actually people are coming to my office. I used to help people to apply grants that's upcoming. The one thing that actually they dealing with is difficult of.
Mr. It looks like you've muted yourself.
Sorry. There is many things that is happening in Lake Street. I've been part of it, and I'm a business owner. I own a track business, which I've been dealing with and training people getting into workplace. The other thing is that people they are bilingual. They don't speak the language. They don't have the capacity to learn the forms. They don't get access to internet. They need help. They actually need help. And the timeline that they need the applications to do is 5 days. Some people don't even get access to do what is the requirement. So I think they need more timing, and most of our business is closing down in Hennepin, Lake Street, because people cannot afford to pay their rent. So they need a backup plan. What can we do? The other thing we need is we need a trauma healing center where people can come and talk about their problem. They need a social worker. They need a friends. They need some people don't like to talk to a social worker, but if they have a friend who they can talk with their problem, that will be helpful. If as a community, if we actually stand by together and help one another, we can achieve what we want and what we're looking for. They can't afford their rent, they can't afford their employees. You see one person who owns a restaurant, now his restaurant is being closing down because the contract end. Can you imagine? Past 2 days was closed. That's the Cedar and Lake. They call Snack Restaurant. Many businesses are going down. So how can we help? What can we do with the trauma? How we can, recover all this? This is what we need our community to do better.
Alicia Gibson.
Yeah, so our small business corridors across Ward 10, but all over Minneapolis are a key part of helping build access to wealth and for like people in our community, and they're also how lots of folks who live in our neighborhoods access their day-to-day resources. And so, some of the things that we can do to help make sure that folks are able to get back on their feet and fully recover are expanding the office of the Small Business Navigator to help make sure that people who own our small businesses are able to access recovery funds and navigate city bureaucracy to better be able to get access to the support that they need. And making sure that we're connecting people and making sure that they're getting the resources they need. And then, directing recovery funds and grants directly into the hands of small businesses. And then, right now, like there's a pool of money from the state and from the federal government that's coming into our city to help alleviate the pressure on small businesses. And so the work that we can do to help make sure that actually makes its way to the people who need it the most, and then that it is making its way to specifically BIPOC and immigrant-owned businesses who have the hardest time, applying for these complicated grants and things like that, is really, really important. Prioritizing federal dollars, making their way directly into the hands of workers and owners. And then investment in placemaking to help facilitate people patronizing our businesses, and then pressuring our state to raise taxes on the wealthiest Minnesotans so that we can reallocate that money directly into the hands of people.
New question. Hennepin, Lindale, Nicollet, the Kmart project, Bryan Avenue South, and Franklin are all slated for major infrastructure improvements in the coming years. Hennepin, Nicollet, and Bryant are city operated, while Franklin, Lindale, and Lake are run by the county. How will you approach engaging government partners as well as residents and businesses on these changes? Uba Noor, start us off.
Actually, I will hold big event here, both the parties, government and business owner, who can invest more. We need more affordable housing. We need more building. We need more employer jobs that we can create. So in order to actually do well, we have to put everyone on call and make sure that they come in the event and talk about what do we actually need in our community. We want to see our streets to be safe. We want people to be trafficking and buying stuff and moving out, and working people. We need more working people. We need homeowners people. People cannot afford their homeowners. If you check the market rate for the one single bedroom, 2 bedroom, or 3 bedroom, is 450. Minority people are the people who mostly own business here. They can't afford it. They're all renters. So how can we find home ownership program which is affordable for everyone, which is open to everyone? How can we help our community to economical growth? And how can we train our people, and how we can bring people together to talk about it? That's why I'm a social worker background, and I like to bring people, listen to them, and figure out what needs to be done so that we are in one page, same page together to help our community to recover the best way so that we can actually be on one page together. And the other thing is that we have more people struggling right now. We have unemployment rate. We have homeless in the street. We have people coming in. What can we do? I went to London. I see new building every day. There is everywhere there is a new building, new construction. If we can bring other consumers to come here and do business, our Lake Street and our county will be better business and better society and better places to live. And everybody will love it. Thank you.
Chibtai.
So all of our major corridors, especially ones where where the city is responsible for them, the reconstruction projects that are coming up are once in a generation opportunity to build our streets for everyone and for the future that we know is coming. Last time Hennepin was redone was in the 1950s. And so really got to think about it as something that's going to be a long-term investment in the type of community we want to live in. So I'm an organizer, and for me, it really matters that we invest in building the type of process and building the infrastructure around the people who need the most access to it. So along some of our busier corridors, the people who live there are working class, they are renters, they are Black and brown, and making sure that our corridors are built so that folks who are a part of these communities, who are more likely to be transit dependent, who are more likely to have a harder time accessing food and day-to-day needs, are able to use our streets and are able to get to work and access the things that they need to live their lives. And then, working with our county and state partners to make sure that the processes that we're creating to gather feedback from people, to make things accessible for people, are available in multiple languages at times where the people who need it the most are able to voice their feedback.
David Wheeler.
I went to the old Kmart building on Saturday to film my little piece about redevelopment. And it was noisy and windy, and the old iPhone did an okay job. But what was so fascinating was that we were right next to a $250 million reconstruction of freeways and highways into the city of Minneapolis. It had just opened up the previous week. And estimates are that we're going to need to spend that same amount of money to redevelop the whole area along Lake Street, about another $250 million. That's a huge amount of money. It's going to come from federal sources. It's going to come from state sources. It's going to come from county sources. It's going to come from city sources. It's going to come from businesses and from a whole bunch of people. It's a massive investment, and it needs to be done in a really kind and thoughtful way. In terms of the redevelopment of the areas, the city and the county need to cooperate. We can't just say this is city property and this is county property and we're going to do it differently. We need to be sure that we're doing it in a collaborative fashion. What we do now is going to make a huge difference, because a lot of these places haven't been touched for, as was mentioned, for 50 years or so. Bryant Avenue, where I live, has been a street, several others live on the street too, has been a street that is in terrible condition. And they have some good plans to redo it. There's been a lot of controversy around it, but it's moving forward, and it will be for the long term. We're living in a time of transition. There's huge transition, and people aren't comfortable with that. We're not going to have as many private automobiles 10 years from now. Enough said. Thanks.
Chris Parsons.
You know, I'm a, you may have heard me say this before, but I'm a firefighter. And, you know, I do that line of work because I really like to solve problems. I like to work with people as part of a team to solve problems. And that's what we do. I became an advocate because I love to work with people solving problems. And I'm running to be the next city council person from Ward 10 because I want to work with people to solve problems. And so as I've been campaigning as I want to govern, and that's by meeting people where they're at. I've visited businesses in every part of the ward. I've knocked on doors and talked to people in every part of the ward to see what their needs are and to figure out, you know, what do you folks believe is the best way forward. I have my ideas, you know, but other people have their ideas too, and everybody deserves to be heard. David brought up the Bryant Avenue situation. You know, the city decided to go a certain way on that, but the process was absolutely flawed. We're dealing with a pandemic, and that has driven us apart and has really made our normal processes not work. And if I ever thought that there was a project that needed to be, you know, maybe delayed for a year, common sense dictated that was one, because people were not heard on that. People didn't even know who was attending the meetings. They didn't know what questions were asked, except for the ones that were cherry picked. So, you know, I believe that, you know, going forward, that we need to work together, and that everybody needs to be heard, and we need to follow the process so people have trust in the process.
Alicia Gibson.
Working on these kinds of projects is really one of the things that I am the most excited about in serving as the Ward 10 City Council member. And it is also an area where I have a particular amount of credibility. When I was living in Cincinnati, I started a small business, and as doing that, I started a small business association because there were development plans happening around us, and the small businesses were being left out. And so that was something that, on top of having an infant in a bookstore, running it all by myself, I also took it upon myself to bring all of the stakeholders together so that everybody was there to have and participate in these conversations. When I served as the president of the Lowry Hill East Neighborhood Association, I partnered with our neighboring association, Whittier, when there were plans around the Garfield parking lot redevelopment that was put on hold. But, you know, we were really bringing together the city leaders, the neighborhood leaders. I was there hosting, you know, helping to host the visioning sessions. This is something that I really love doing. It's also one of the most important things that we do as a city, because it's how people really engage with democracy. And it really, you know, impacts how people are going to feel either empowered or disempowered. And for too long, we have had processes that are doing the opposite of building community. We're actually disempowering people and making people feel run over from city planning decisions. You know, this is doing democracy with circles, engaging communities in public planning. Restorative justice, restorative facilitation is something that I feel very strongly about. And it's not just something that we, you know, lead to harm and trauma situations, but it's something that the way we can approach democracy itself.
Katie Jones.
So I've been running this campaign to create a community where everyone knows that they belong. And that means making sure that our city is accessible. And I say, cue the 15-minute city, a vision where residents can access their everyday destinations with a 15-minute walk, bike, roll, or transit ride. When I talk to neighbors, they love the walkability, the bikeability, the transit options in Ward 10 and want to see that even better. They're also worried about speeding vehicles on streets with children and about how to efficiently travel around without harming the planet. And in a 15-minute city, kids can safely bike to school, seniors can walk to the store, and commuters can affordably and reliably take an electric bus or train to work. As an engineer and someone who's served on a number of infrastructure and advisory committees, I consider myself an infrastructure nerd. And so I'm really excited to use data and bring the best examples from around the world to our city. When it comes to collaboration, especially with the county, it's something that I do in my day job. I work with Hennepin County on the Efficient Buildings Collaborative. So I plan to do something very similar when it comes to transportation and infrastructure. And I've actually talked to our county commissioner, Marion Green, about the Fix Lindale initiative already. I also want to talk about engagement. It's very important, and letting people know what the process is critical. So there is a 3-step process in Minneapolis's engagement. Big ideas are started with the very first level of engagement, and those are narrowed down to 2 recommendations and then narrowed down to a single final recommendation. It's critical if people really want to get in on the ground floor, they have to come to that first part of planning, because otherwise we're investing a lot of time and energy and really tax dollars into this planning. And so I want to make sure that as council member, I'm explaining how that all works to our community. And as someone who uses all modes of transportation to get around, I know that we don't always feel so.
I'm gonna have to cut you off, Ms. Johnson. Thank you. One quick follow-up on that topic. A few of you already mentioned specific projects and your thoughts on them, but could each of you speak to specifics on either any of the corridors mentioned in this question or just throughout this forum, or other infrastructure projects that are ongoing that you have thoughts on, or areas of infrastructure that you would look to push for specific projects? Just want to hear any kind of specific thoughts you have on specific work on infrastructure in the city right now, starting with David Wheeler.
Well, that's sort of a very broad kind of question. I don't have any specific infrastructure projects that I would be pushing. I think I want to reflect that there's no question that the planning process that we've gone through for Bryan Avenue was an absolute mess. You don't come with plans saying this is the way it's going to be, and then when you get pushback, you alter it and you say, oh, well, we listened and we got public input. That's not a way to do it. You come with 2 or 3 different options and you allow people to choose. I don't have any strong feelings about special projects right now. I know that we need to keep speed bumps. I hear about when I go knocking on doors, people want speed bumps because 20 is plenty are the signs that are up. People are driving 40 and 50 miles an hour down roads where there are children and stuff. That's really dangerous. And somebody asked me, how do I get a speed bump on my road? I said, call 311. They'll tell you who to talk to, go do it. And you can start a process to do it. We need to listen to our citizens. We need to be involved in their projects. Obviously, we're going to have some major redevelopments that are going to happen along Lake Street. And there has to be a really good listening process as part of that. And we need to empower, make sure that we provide support to the minority-owned businesses, because I think that's absolutely crucial. I have a closing story, if we're going to have a closing opportunity to speak, because we never really had quite an opening. We went right into questions. So I want to make sure I have a minute or 2 at the end for a story I need to tell about something I experienced today. Okay.
We do have time there will be closing statements.
Good. Thank you.
That. Sure. Yes. Now, Chris Parsons, you can take this question again. Just you're thinking on any infrastructure projects ongoing or that you would like to push.
Yeah, so I talked about the process, and the process being very important because we're taxing people, we're taxing businesses as a result of these projects. So we need to make sure that that people get their day to voice their opinion and also state what their needs are. as far as specific projects, well, I brought up the Bryan Avenue project, but that, the die has already been cast on that one. But we do have another one, and that's the Hennepin Avenue project. And frankly, I talked to a number of businesses. I talked to the business associations, and I'm hard pressed to find anybody that thinks that this is a good idea. You're taking a street that is busy with 4 lanes of traffic and squeezing it down to 2. You're restricting left turn lanes. You're going to be pushing traffic onto side streets that are already choked with cars. I live on Emerson Avenue. It's not really in the zone of that's going to be rebuilt, but my street is choked with cars. If we want a city that's more dense, but then we're getting rid of parking minimums and we're getting rid of parking spaces, we're going to put more cars on the road. People are not going to be all riding bikes in the next 20 years. We're not going to go from driving to just everyone's going to ride a bike because it's so onerous. That seems to be what the policy is trying to drive us to drive us out of the city and do some kind of weird social engineering. And also, lastly, where are the charging stations for all of our cars? I live in an apartment building. I don't have access to a charging station. Where am I going to charge my electric vehicle? That is coming. It's not if, it's when. We need to prepare. We're not doing it.
Thank you. Alicia Gibson, your answer.
Yeah, there are a couple of projects that I'm particularly excited about. And the first is the Kmart opening up of Nicollet and whatever we're going to see there. Another thing that I have done in terms of collaborating in planning processes is participated, actually kind of was part of the planning team for a design charrette that we put together for community that included businesses, that included all of the neighboring partners for a bicycle and pedestrian pathway that was opened up. The amazing thing about that was that it really got everybody invested in the outcome. It was something that really built community, so that this is part of what we mean by the end is not, the only thing you're looking for. You're trying to build processes that do that work of building community at the same time. And so I think that Kmart site is a place where we can really have some really great imagining and participation by the people that live there, the communities that Uba is talking about that always get left behind, that always get ignored in terms of what they want in their cities, how they want to live. The other one is Hennepin Avenue. And this is I think that this is a project that is going in the wrong direction in the sense of the way the process is going. I just read an email from businesses who are trying to, get a third option. And they have been told by the lead planner that, nope, the time has expired, even though they never got to participate in the creation of the 2 plan, the option to begin with. But this is not really how we design and build a community that everybody can, be invested in. And Chris is right that we need to be introducing e-car charging instead of removing all of the parking. If we're planning for 60 years, when we're planning for a city of the future, we need to have e-cars there. And the great thing is that we can build this as a vision for the Hennepin corridor, which can be really, a vision of a sustainable city that people who come and visit here and shop here can take home and say, this is what my main street can look like. And then we are really inspiring change beyond even Ward 10. Beyond Minneapolis. And so these are just a couple of the projects that I would really love to be actively participating in. And I'm not sure where the timer
Alicia, thank you for graciously kind of stopping, because it appears we've lost the timer. I'm going to time you now myself
this is dangerous.
for 2 minutes and kind of flag you down as you're down to your last 20 seconds or so. And this will work, I think. So how about Uba Noor? Can you, you'll be our first test subject. Your answer, please.
Yeah, there is a special project that I really would like to see in our work 10. Mostly we forget about our community because we don't do community engagement. We don't talk to the people at the right time. We give them small amount, they don't actually perceive what had been need to be done in their community. So the things I really want to talk about the children playground. Each family have 1, 2, they don't have a playground. Each apartment you can see there is no playground. Where is the children? Where we live in our children? Where we live in with older people? They don't have place to stay and talk about it, their problem coming together. It's wherever you go, there is always place where people need to be. We actually forget about the human need each other to talk their problem, come together. When you are a mother, you have 2 children or 3 children, you need a playground. You leave this apartment, you have to be able to go down and play with other kids. So what else I want to see? I really want to see high tall buildings. Under the first floor will be a market, a supermarket where people can just come down and get whatever they need. I want to see walking streets. People can, whoever has can access. Winter is coming. We need to have a heating place where people can just do walking, or can integrate. We want to see beautiful place. After 6 years from today, what do we want to see our community? The other thing is that we planning, but what are we planning? I want to see beautiful Minnesota nice again. How can we do? We want our people to heal it back. We want to have we want to have more housing, affordable housing. We want to have different people coming together and invest in our community. We want to listen each part. We want to listen everyone. Everyone is important. When we come together, we united, we can do it better in our community. So the other thing I really want to see is that we say more biking, electric cars in everywhere, every country, is because the health. America health is really going poor because we don't eat proper food. We actually died mostly. We need
You can hear
to
that
eat
buzzer,
health.
right?
We want to
Uba,
do well in our community, and that's what we can do.
That'll be your time. Did you see the 20 seconds of the chat feature? Does that work? I can throw up a 20 seconds there. If you didn't see that, no, that's not easy. Let's not forget that. I'll just wave. Look at me. I'll be the human yellow light. Aisha Chugtai, your answer on this infrastructure question, please.
Okay. I really want to see us in these projects prioritize what it looks like for us to practice racial and economic justice for residents who live in the area. So, building our streets so that we are prioritizing people who are walking, who are biking, using public transit, especially, and driving to get from place to place. And then, prioritizing people who are using these other modes of transportation non-recreationally, meaning they're using them because they don't have access to a car and it wasn't a choice they made. It's like a reality of the economic situation that they are in. And so prioritizing and finding ways for us to reduce the cost of using public transit or eliminating it altogether and moving to zero fare public transit. And then reducing our reliance on law enforcement as the enforcement mechanism for building our streets and keeping them safe, right? We know that is one, very, very ineffective. It doesn't work. And then two, can result in the criminalization and at times death of people in our communities, and that's unacceptable. And so really thinking about how we are using street design as a way to have safer streets, keeping cars slow, making sure people are able to access their needs and reducing costs and barriers instead of relying on law enforcement to do that for us.
I was so ready to be the yellow. Okay, Katie Jones, you were.
So I want to start out with a few facts. First, that Hennepin Avenue has 3 of the top 25 most dangerous intersections on just basically a 1 mile stretch of street. We also know that businesses along that corridor want more customers, and that the climate is changing. And so I think that with a redesign of this street, we can actually act on all 3 of those issues. So I've served on CLIC, the Capital Long Range Improvement Committee, and I've seen this project come down the pipeline for the past 4 years, and actually advocated for an engagement advisory committee, which was created by the city to make sure that, especially during this pandemic, that we were reaching out to as many folks along this corridor as literally possible. And through that, we were able to engage many more renters than otherwise would have been engaged. And I know the city talked to every single business owner or attempted to along the corridor. I've also talked to the business association. I've talked to business owners, and I've literally walked up and down the corridor with a clipboard. And so I have definitely just love to talk about this street. I've also studied the parking situation there. And I think that overall I think this is a yes and situation where we can create a safer street, a climate friendly street, and a customer friendly street if we expand our transportation options around this street. You know, we can take lessons learned from other places like Bloor Street in Toronto, where when they expanded the transportation options on their street, businesses saw more customers that spent more money and they felt safer along that corridor. We've actually experienced that here in Minneapolis too, when bike lanes were added to Central Avenue, spending increased at area restaurants. And we've also seen, on streets south of Lake Street on Lyndale, when the lanes were brought down to one in either direction with a left turn lane, that actually made smoother traffic. And really that's what people are wanting, right? They want to just be able to get through their place or through the street and through the corridor in a non-stressful manner. And I think with the designs.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. That's your time. Thank you. Sorry, I know this might be a little rough, but that is your time. The next question concerns climate change, and it is, how does your understanding of the city's climate action plan and goals inform your approach to infrastructure in the ward and citywide? I'll just actually start again with you, Ms. Jones, please.
So I've worked in sustainability for the last decade, and I've also worked in City Hall in the sustainability office. I actually calculated the city's greenhouse gas emissions in 2015, and so have a really good understanding that the two areas where we really need to focus our energy is on energy in buildings and energy from our transportation. So when it comes to energy in buildings, you know, we have 100,000 buildings in this city that need to decarbonize, and that really is meaning focusing on heating in buildings. In my own triplex, we've electrified our heating with heat pumps, and we're going to need to, you know, there were issues with that, I'll be honest. And so we need to pilot that in the multitudes of types of buildings throughout our city, so that we can get lessons learned and then scale. Because as an engineer, I think about research, pilot, and scale. On the transportation side, we need to be, as I've been saying, expanding our transportation options. As a member of the Sustainable Transportation Advisory Committee to MnDOT, you know, we helped MnDOT establish a VMT, vehicle miles traveled reduction goal, which is going to be critical to reducing emissions from our state. And Minneapolis and St. Paul, so urban areas of our state, are going to have to take a leading role on reducing our vehicle emissions. And yes, EVs are going to be a part of that, but a lot of that is also taking advantage of the beautiful density that we have in this city. The ability to, you know, the reason that people love living here, especially in Ward 10, is the walkability, and taking advantage of that, expanding our biking access, and especially expanding our transit access. I am so excited about the E line that is coming into Hennepin, the B line that is going to be coming onto Lyndale. You know, soon we need to keep pushing for the B line is going to come onto Lake Street. We need to keep pushing on for a BRT line on Lyndale. You know, having options is what's going to really help us reduce that vehicle miles traveled and our greenhouse gas emissions, and help us as a city address climate change.
Uba Noor.
There is a building and streets, and really, when we look at our streets, it does look really not really safe. When people can imagine, when you look, you feel scared. It doesn't look like the business that we used to have in Lake Street and Hennepin and Bryan area. We wanna have a welcoming business, and we want to build accessibility, public accessibility transportation, so people have access to come to the business and buy more stuffs. I talked to some business owner. The most thing that they scare is that the glass will be broke again. They have things and plaques for the borders. When you go other states, you see everything is moving normally. But in Minneapolis, especially Ward 10, still we feel unsafe. So in order to feel safe and secure, we have to be open more and build more in our community. We talk about the parking space. We need a parking space where people can pay monthly fees, which doesn't matter where you park your car, you pay monthly. That will be another income to city Minneapolis city councilor. And then we can people can park wherever they feel safe. Some people like to drive, some people don't like to drive. We also encourage the transportation and walkability. Energy, we talk about climate. You can feel most of our family in Ward 10, they're actually struggling high big gas bills. They live affordable housing. The income is really more than what they're supposed to pay the rent. People cannot pay their rent. They have children, their electricity will be cut. They come to us to help them. Come help me. The system is not helping people. It's taking time. And so how can we help our community to get together and get their service when they need and the help when they need? Walkability, we'll talk about. We need more affordable energy assistance system. We need walkability in our neighborhood. We need to feel more safe in our neighborhood. We want to see beautiful places. How can we make it? We can make it if we get together and help the people. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Chris Parsons, please.
So the solutions are complex and they're varied, and we do need buildings that are more energy efficient. We need, as government, we need to give tax incentives to people to make their buildings more energy efficient. We need to do what we can to see that new buildings are more energy efficient. But we also need to, and we also need more transportation options, and those are coming. And buses are going more and more electric. They're getting more efficient. Not too far down the road, we'll have autonomous vehicles. They'll be smaller. They'll run more often because they won't be reliant on a driver to always be driving them. So, so we're meeting the challenges, but we're also really missing the ball and missing the opportunity. The federal government is debating an infrastructure bill right now that's anywhere between $1 and $3 trillion. About 7.5 billion of that is going to build 500,000 electric vehicle parking stations or charging stations. We need to get on that. I was at the IBEW training center. They are training their workers to install these charging stations. I don't see them in any of our street designs and any of our street plans, and nobody's pushing them. I will admit, I like to bike. I do like to bike. I moved to my neighborhood because I like to bike. I like to be near businesses. I bike a lot whenever I can, but it's also cold here. No amount of climate change in my lifetime is going to make me want to bike year round and use it for my only mode of transportation. So we need to be smart as government. We need to be solving people's needs, but also have an eye on the future, and the future is coming, and let's not miss the boat.
There's the bell. How about an answer from David Wheeler?
There's no debating about the severity of climate change. All we have to do is look what is happening around the world, and the fires that we've had, hazy skies. We had a large fire as close as northern Minnesota. This cannot be denied. It was denied for the previous 4 years, on and on, but it can't be denied anymore. We need to be part of the solution, and part of the solution means we need to have less vehicles. We need to drive less vehicles. My husband and I now use one car between us. Is it a little inconvenient? Yeah, it is, but we have to plan it. We have to organize it. We use the bus. We do a little bit of biking, not as much as we used to. Something about hip replacement has something to do with that. But the bottom line is we all have to take personal responsibility as individuals, as citizens of the city, not to use as much energy. We need to do retrofitting on our old buildings. If we really believe in affordable housing, it isn't going to be big, huge, expensive new places. It's going to be retrofitting some of our older buildings. These neighborhoods in our area were built in the teens and the 20s and some in the 30s and some even earlier. Those buildings need to be retrofitted to reduce energy consumption. We need charging stations, no question. It's been part of my plan and part of what I have talked about. We have to approach it on a whole bunch of different ways. We have to be willing to live in a house that only heats up to about 66 degrees. You put on a sweater. You don't turn it up to 74 degrees and run around in a pair of shorts in the middle of the winter. It's not a good idea. We have to change the way we live. Enough.
Alicia Gibson.
Yeah, so in order to meet our city's climate goals, we have to, I want to see us accelerate the electrification of our city's vehicle fleet, and then work with our partners to electrify metro transit buses, and then prioritize those new electrified buses to first be used in neighborhoods that have the worst air quality, so that we can, start to address the poor air quality in those communities and not add to it. And then we have to expand our green infrastructure in our streets, like, adding trees and planters to improve the quality of air in our streets, and also provide some support for extreme heat that we're going to start to see more and more in our summers. And then we have to expand access to sustainable transportation and help reduce driving, those vehicle miles traveled by 1.5% every year to meet our goals. And then we have to expand the network of public electric vehicle charging stations in our city, so that renters and people who live in multi-unit buildings, like Chris was talking about earlier, are or who don't have access to off-street parking are better and more easily able to access realistically electric vehicles.
And finally on this question, Alicia Gibson.
I'm a climate mom. I'm raising 2 small children in the age of climate change, and it's something that really weighs on me. So this is something that I take very seriously. Environmental justice, environmental issues has also been a lifelong passion of mine before we really realized the severity of the climate crisis. When I lived in South Africa, I designed and implemented an environmental justice project. Now, the important thing about environmental justice is that it's not just that we are focusing on a solution for a problem, in this instance, climate change, but that we are ensuring that people are being brought along and that they are active agents in the change rather than being forced or coerced into making changes that fit a solution. And that is really the whole reason why the environmental justice started, by people of color who said, look, this, white environmental movement has all of these ideas that they are pushing down on us without taking into account the way that our lives are. And so when I went down to talk to the Hennepin Avenue businesses, I stopped first at the Black-owned businesses who told me that I was the first person that had anything to do with the city that had stopped in to talk to them. They feel very disempowered by the way that these changes are coming down in the name of environmental, climate change issues. So we cannot be replicating structures of injustice and disempowerment. So we need to work with our businesses. We've already had some great ideas about, the electric vehicles are coming. We can build in e-car charging and then give people credit for shopping in businesses while they are charging. So this is a win-win thing. We're giving renters a place to charge. We're giving visitors a place to charge. These are the kinds of solutions we need to empower people in this process of addressing climate change.
Before we close things with everyone's closing statement. I think we have just enough time for a quick 1 minute lightning round session. It's a little off topic because it has to do with the ballot questions. We'll do 2 of the 3. The public safety one, of course, we'll take care of in the next installment. So in a minute's time, could each of you first say whether or not you support the government structure, executive mayor, legislative council question, and the rent control question? So strong mayor, rent control, yes, no, however much you want to explain within a minute, please. First up, Katie Jones.
So I'm an admitted fan of efficiency, but not at the expense of democracy. A recent testifier at the Charter Commission who worked in both the mayoral offices in St. Paul and Minneapolis noted that although Minneapolis's weak mayor system is less efficient, it does provide for better representation and more innovation. A strong council system better ensures that minority communities have a voice. And if we are committed to equity in our community, we have to vote no on question 1.
Any thoughts on the rent control question?
Yes, good question. So I am voting yes on that question. So I think that is unique for someone who in my position. So I have 2 rental properties, but I am worried about the imbalance between landlords and renters. And I want to make sure that the city does have levers to make sure that our neighbors who are renters are not being price gouged.
Next, we'll go with Alicia Gibson, please. I might just keep the timer on, so when you hear it, just kind of stop. Cool. Okay, Alicia Gibson.
How long do I have?
1 minute to
Okay.
everyone.
Okay. So on the first one, I am going to vote yes. I would like for us to have a more transparent, accountable system. Right now, it's pretty Byzantine. It's a little difficult to figure out as an average person who is accountable for what. So when there are failures, it's really unclear, and it enables people to point fingers back and forth. I would like for us to have a system that's more like St. Paul, that's more like any of the other big cities we know. There was a study, a report done that showed the department head said that it's a very difficult system to work in, where they're getting opposing directives. On the rent control, I am very open-minded to rent control, but I think that this amendment has a clause in it that is legally questionable. I would rather spend millions of dollars on affordable housing rather than on defending something that is likely to not be held up in a court. And what I would like to do is have a working group that really looks at stabilization, because we don't want to confuse means and ends. We need to address how people stay in homes, how people are stable, able to not be displaced. So let's convene all of the appropriate partners to focus on that.
Chris Parsons.
So I work in St. Paul, live in Minneapolis, and I am going to be voting yes on the executive mayor legislative council amendment. That's how we run it in, that's how the government runs in St. Paul. I see it as an efficient way to do it. St. Paul is also really good with constituent service. So I would love to see a ballot initiative that mandates that city council people have to return emails and phone calls, because I've talked to so many people that feel abandoned by their city council people. So let's kind of turn that around a little bit. But yeah, I'll be voting in favor of that amendment, and I will be voting no on rent control. I want to direct help to the people that need it, and there's just, and also get rid of bad policies that are leading towards gentrification.
Isaac Chukta.
Yeah, so I believe that we have to be building our city so that we live in a Minneapolis that's just and equitable for everyone, and where decisions that we make come from our residents and prioritize marginalized people. and their needs. And so what we're seeing right now is conservative forces in the city doing their level best to consolidate power at the top and be less and less accountable to people's needs. And take the power, take decision-making power through our council members away from us. And that is why I oppose the strong mayor amendment and support the rent control amendment.
Uba Noor.
For me, the first question for my executive, I like to say yes. I always support the mayor, and that will be accountability. And we need to actually, somebody has to know what to do and to take the blame or to lead what we need our city. The second question, which is rental control, it's not actually clear, but it's affordable. If it's affordable, we need to know actually how affordable it is. And I also amendment that one will be yes. And the second one and the third will be yes. Those two yes, the first one no.
Thank you for answering all of those questions, each of you. We are closing in the last.
I haven't had the opportunity to give my answer.
No, you haven't, David Wheeler. Please answer. Will you please answer the question? A minute to you.
I'm the only candidate who's actually been a city council member. I was in Duluth, where we had a strong mayor system, and the mayor made a decision which I didn't like. He vetoed our making a human rights commission the law of Duluth, so we overread his veto. A council in a legislative capacity can override the power of a mayor. I'm a strong supporter of the very First Amendment. Right now, we have a real problem because the mayor has almost all of the responsibility, almost none of the authority, and the council has almost all of the authority and none of the responsibility. They proved that in the last 18 months. It's been an absolute mess. I do not think that rent control works. I think it's a great idea. It sounds good, but places where it's been tried, it has not worked well. So I will give a strong yes for the first one, and I will give a no for the third one. Thank you.
Now, thank you. And now we're on to closing statements. And to make sure I don't make a mistake I just made again, could you start us off, please, David Wheeler, with your closing statement? 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. Today, I got in my car and I drove from uptown on Lake Street all the way down to where the light rail comes. And then I turned around pretty quickly and came back. And what I saw were some vitality in some places. I saw some sort of painful things in others. What I was particularly struck with was I saw several people walking along the street, and they were clearly in distress. I don't know if it was addiction or mental illness, but there were a number of people as I drove and saw that. And I was reflecting to myself, we live in a very wealthy country. Why can't we help meet the needs, not just the infrastructure, not just the buildings, not just the businesses, but the human needs in our community? Now, none of us can wave a wand. None of us can do that in government or in faith communities or nonprofits. But I think we have a deep commitment to all people who stand in need in our community. And that's the kind of infrastructure, the human infrastructure that we need to invest in. Thank you.
Aisha Chuta, your statement, please.
Yeah, so I'm a renter, I'm a union organizer, I'm a firstborn daughter in a Muslim immigrant family. In my day job, I work with frontline workers in advocating for their needs to their elected leaders, and have seen firsthand how powerful it is when people are heard and that their needs are responded to by their elected leaders, and how scary it is when they don't. And I'm running to be somebody who is going to be accessible and responsive to our community's needs. We know the stakes are really high today for renters, for people living in poverty, for Black, Brown, and Indigenous folks, and they're only getting higher. That's why we need a leader who's going to fight for making sure that we're leaving no one behind, because I understand what it's like to be left behind. I really know Ward 10 to be a community where we come together to support one another in times of hardship and struggle. And it's why I'm running. It's why I care about this community. Early voting has already started, and will run through election day. So, just making sure that you're finding your ways to figure out who your candidates are going to be, and ranking 3 choices and voting on or before November 2nd.
Katie Jones.
I first want to thank, the Uptown Business Association, Lake Street Council, Lena, and South Uptown Neighborhood Association for hosting this event, and thank my fellow candidates for being here. I'm running for city council because when I moved here, my neighbors welcomed me and opened doors for me. And I just want everyone who lives here to feel that way too, to know that they belong and that this community has their back. I want to share a story. As an engineer, I'm a problem solver. And when I was on the Parks Advisory Committee, there was a contention around expanding the basketball court in Miller Park. There were lots of facets to this, but one of the things was, I saw an opportunity to expand, a positive activity, which is especially valued by younger and BIPOC community members. Others saw this, the expansion, as a threat to park tree cover. And so, I sat down over multiple conversations with neighbors, iterating and rejiggering and trying to lay out different options, really striving to find common ground. And we ultimately did it. We realized that we could turn the court 90 degrees, fit a full court, and keep the full the tree canopy that's in the park. That's the type of problem solving that I'm going to do, and I'm going to bring to the council. I'm going to work with those who I may not agree with on the outset and try to find common ground. I also want to note that this next council member in this seat is only going to have a 2-year term rather than a typical 4. 2 years is short, not a lot of time to learn the ropes of City Hall, understand the dynamics between the various departments and council, and learn what it takes to develop and adopt policy. Given that this council term is only 2 years, we need someone who knows cities. In my current job, I work specifically with cities on energy policy program and development. And I've worked with cities across the state, and I've been embedded in Minneapolis City Hall. I'm ready to take my skills and bring them to bear for my neighbors. And I hope to earn your first choice vote come this election. Thank you so much.
Ubanur.
My name is Ubahnur, and I'm really thankful to be here. And thanks whoever organized this organization, and Lake Street. We say thank you for listening. One thing that there is 2 things what reason I'm running. I am working. I'm a full-time employee. I own my own business, and I see most of the time our city council let us down. We don't get what we need in our community. That's why I'm running. I'm an immigrant. I came here to get a better future and better life. I graduate here, working full time. I have my own business running, and I'm still helping my community. The reason I'm here today is that there is 2 things. 1 is public safety, and 2 is affordable housing. We have large families in Ward 10, working families and business owners, small business, who need someone who listen to them. I have a capacity of bringing people together. I have a great problem solving. I like people to listen and help them to guide the right way. That's what I've been doing. Helping people to start their own business and finding their first employment. I'm a community organizer. I know what our community needs. 2 years term, they need somebody who can listen. We have a traumatized community that need to be healed back. We have a lot of people die of COVID-19. We have families lost their business. We have people who are still in hospital. We have homeless everywhere we go. This today, when I was in my office, I went down to get my lunch. That story that I would like to share with you. There was a lady laying down in the restaurant, and her boyfriend was, sitting with her. I look at them and I say, "What happened?" And he said, "Because of she's not feeling good." So I say, "What is happening?" I don't know what happened, but she was like someone who's struggling in something. I don't know, mental illness or anything like that. I say, "How can I be helpful?" He said, "If you can grab a sandwich, that will help." So the things our community need is somebody who care, and I care, and I'm glad if I can own your first choice to vote for me. Thank you.
Chris Parsons.
First of all, I want to thank Lake Street Council, Uptown Association, and the neighborhoods for hosting this important forum. The vitality of Lake Street is critical to the resurgence of Minneapolis. Lake Street, as I said before, is the economic, the commercial, and cultural heart of the South Side and the city of Minneapolis. And just as it runs pretty much uninterrupted from river to our western border, it's been a big part of and an almost uninterrupted part of my life. One of my first memories was of my dad taking my brother and I to Kaplan's to get our winter clothes. My dad was a construction worker, and he worked outside in all types of weather. Didn't matter how cold it was, and that's where he got his cold weather gear. And some kids went to Dayton's and got Santa Bears. I went to Kaplan's and got work gloves to survive the winter. So, I talked about in my video how good intentions and great ideas can only get you so far. We need a leader that can get things done, and it's been brought up that there's only 2 years, but a lot of us have expertise. I've spent 16 years working on policy at the city level, at the federal level, and at the state level. You can find out more at www.christopherward10.com. My record is too extensive to talk about here, so go there and read up on it. We need people that can get things done, and that will advocate for our neighbors, and that will be accessible. And like I said, that will return phone calls and actually talk to people, not tweet at people. Let's get back to being a community again. And thank you for having me.
Alicia Gibson.
I'll join the chorus of thank yous and express my gratitude for everyone who could be here. I'm particularly thankful for an opportunity to really have forums that are really specific on subject matter. And then I also want to say thank you to Uba, who is a small business owner who has participated in this. I owned a small business as well, and I know how difficult it is to manage your small business, be present for your family, and then also on top of that, do all of the community work. When I was serving in the neighborhood association, and we did a strategic planning for our association, we first kind of asked people, what is it that you love about where you live? And one of the things that really united everybody is something that a lot of people here have said, right? Unites these candidates as well. And that is that people are here because we want to be able to walk, we want to be able to ride our bicycles, and we want to be able to take short trips in our car when we need to do that, when we have elderly loved ones or children, or really crushed for time. So our business hubs, our business corridors, they are really the heart of this ward. They're community spaces. They're not just private businesses. And I have a record of working with these businesses, of including them very specifically as part of our community. And that is something that I will continue to do. Even as a candidate, I have organized a Ward 10 Business Summit, because one of the things that I've identified is that we really need to build constituent power. We need to be empowering communities by building constituent power. And this was one of the first times, we really brought businesses together from across the board to talk about their shared issues, their shared struggles, or shared goals. And one of the things is that they would like to participate in our government structure at a much earlier phase. And so that's something that I want to focus on. The other thing is that our business corridors really are struggling right now. And so one of the things that
That's
I will
your
do.
2 minutes, Ms. Gibson.
Okay,
Thank you. I'm
sure.
gonna have to cut you off there. Thank
Okay.
you. And thank everyone else, all the candidates, for participating in this round one forum presented by the Uptown Association, Lake Street Council, and the Wedge Neighborhood Association. Round 2 on public safety is October 5th, same time, same place. We hope to see you there. Thank you all again and have a good evening.
Thank you.